No bail for Maxwell. I was in court today and I'll tell you all about it. Hello everybody, welcome. I'm Roberta Glass and you're listening to my True Crime Report. I was at the Southern District of New York courthouse this morning, bright and early at 5:50 a.m. The first person in line, I'd like to give a shout out to Scott of the True Crime Loser podcast and Will of the Times of London. They were my buddies as we waited 7 hours to get in, and shout out to you. So, this was a different kind of bail hearing than I am used to attending. Now, because of COVID, this bail hearing was done by Zoom, and the Southern District of New York courthouse opened up their jury assembly room where juries are chosen, and they showed a Zoom bail hearing where Ghislaine Maxwell was zooming in from the Brooklyn jail that she is now calls home. Her lawyer Mark Cohen was zooming in from what looked like to be his home. The judge, Allison Nathan, was zooming in from undisclosed, couldn't tell where she was, although she was in a black robe. And the state was zooming in from what looked like the district attorney's office or a big conference room with a long rectangular table. Now, Maxwell was offering $5 million. She proposed 6 unnamed co-signers, the handing over of her 3 passports, her French passport, her UK passport, and her US passport. Now, the government made the argument that Maxwell had the money, the ability, and the motivation to flee, and that she was skilled at hiding. And they pointed out that when she got caught, she did not listen to the FBI's instructions to open the door of the room that she was in her home. Instead, she fled to another room and closed the door. She was also caught with her cell phone wrapped in tinfoil to evade detection. Now, does that work? Does anybody let me know in the comment section if actually covering your cell phone with tinfoil works? So after a few trial runs of waiting to get into this jury room, we were let in. All the seats were COVID distance apart and on 2 very, very poor screens with not such great picture quality and not such great sound quality. We were all waiting for the bail hearing to begin, and all of a sudden a woman flashed on both of the screens, and someone in the audience shouted, "That's her, that's her." And she is unrecognizable. Maxwell is unrecognizable from the pictures that we've all seen of her. Gone is the short hair. She had long hair. It was greasy and pulled back into either a ponytail or a bun. And her eyebrows, however, were perfectly groomed. People were discussing whether or not she had face work. Some were saying she just had lip fillers. I think she's had some other kind of work in addition. The kind of sharpness of her face seemed to be toned down a little bit. And she just looked different. She was dressed in what looked to be like a black or probably more like a deep brown or deep maroon t-shirt, a little bit of eye makeup. And at first when she came on the screen, I thought, oh, wow. My first impression was she's so teenager-ish. She looked like a teenager waiting to take some exam or a teenager at the beginning of detention. And very quickly when her lawyer came on and the state came on and the judge came on and the judge started asking her questions, she became very regal, almost transformed into another person, and that very posh British accent came out. Yes, Judge. Thank you, Judge. And all I can say is that she has this, always a pose with her chin. When she's displeased, her chin is down. When she's kind of talks with, like a queen talks to their subjects. I don't know how to express that in any other language, but just sort of kind of pointing with her chin when she talks, very, very well-mannered, and obviously she wanted to make a good impression on this judge. And her lawyer, Mark Cohen, is obviously a very sharp, high-powered lawyer. She's also represented by Chris Everdale, who prosecuted El Chapo. He was not present by video. I believe he was listening in. And after a few, preliminary questions about her waiving her rights, and if her lawyer had explained to her what she was charged with, and the yes, Judge, and thank you, Judge, we got into the arguments, and there were a few surprises. One, the state was only arguing that she was a flight risk, and that was the reason to deny bail. They did not want the court to take into consideration that she was a danger to the community, and considering that these are charges having to do with children, that surprised me. Two, now they had hinted at this a bit in their filing, the government, that Maxwell's finances, they described them as, quote, completely opaque, unquote. But the picture that I got in court was that Maxwell is hiding her finances and lying about them. For one, the state disclosed in pretrial services that when Maxwell was asked about her finances, she says, I don't have the details, and she eventually said that she had less than $1 million in one bank account and no monthly income. The state disclosed that that was untrue, that she had $10 million in one Swiss bank account that was handled by trustees, $4 million in another Swiss bank account, and that even more absurdly, Maxwell offered to stay in a posh luxury hotel indefinitely until the trial began. Now, this trial is now scheduled to begin July 12th, 2021. So if you have less than $1 million in your bank account and no income and you want to stay in a luxury hotel, so that was also a big thing that went against her, was that she had no permanent residence in New York while she awaited trial. The state also told a very interesting story about when Maxwell bought her New Hampshire home. She introduced herself and another man as Scott, and I'm sorry about the bad sound, so it was either Jen or Janet Marshall. And Maxwell described herself as a journalist, and Scott, the man posing as Scott Marshall, introduced himself as a retired member of the British military. Now, that looks very bad for her because she's already taking on aliases. And for what? So then her high-priced, slightly Better Call Saul lawyer spoke, and he spoke forever. The state gave a very concise, clear argument. Two victims spoke. One, Jane Doe, gave the state a written statement that the state read, saying that they knew this woman knew Maxwell and was excuse me, the Jane Doe said that she experienced 10 years of dehumanizing abuse, quote unquote, at the hands of Maxwell for 10 years. She also described a phone call after Jeffrey Epstein was arrested where Maxwell threatened the life of Jane Doe's 2-year-old child. And Jane Doe said, well, if Maxwell gets bail, then I need to be protective. I will not be safe. Another victim spoke via phone, Annie Farmer, and she began in tears, and she said, I met Maxwell and Epstein when I was 16. She said that Maxwell has no remorse, that she tormented her and other survivors, and that she shows contempt for the legal system by committing perjury. It was a very short statement. Now, back to Mark Cohen, Maxwell's high-priced Better Call Saul type of lawyer. And when I say Better Call Saul, it's because what he did is he was willing to spin on behalf of Maxwell, and that it partially is his duty and job, but with such a sense of flair and kind of wild claims. Let me get into it. And he went on forever. He said, my client is a citizen of 3 countries, and what, are we not going to give bail to anyone who's a citizen of another country? And he stated a court case to back up that. He brought in every court case and the kitchen sink. He brought up Madoff. He brought up Esposito. He brought up even the 2 people who were recently arrested and got bail for throwing a Molotov cocktail in the cop's car. There was no end to the amount of high-profile and dangerous, scary people that got bail that he was going to bring up. He also brought up, interestingly enough, Adnan Khashoggi, a Saudi citizen released on what he describes as good bail conditions. And he said, my client was not trying to flee from the FBI when they arrested her. She was in her pajamas, and she had one security guard, and that security guard was just there because she has so much bad press and is been painted as such a villain in the press and has so many angry members of the public after her that she needed to hire that security guard. And that her front door was open, and that her phone was hacked. And that's why she had the tinfoil around her phone, was because it was hacked. And she didn't want it to be hacked again. And that she's receiving death threats. Now, this bail hearing was not even full. So do you really think that there are members of the public constantly writing her emails and threatening her life? I'm not saying it might not have happened once or twice, but who can even find Maxwell's email, let alone harass her via email or phone? And who is hacking Maxwell's phone? Well, maybe the press, but who can find her? Cohen also brought up that if the government had just let him know that they planned to arrest Maxwell, he would have arranged to hand her over. And a very interesting part of his argument was saying that my client is covered by Jeffrey Epstein's non-prosecutorial agreement that was made in Florida. Now, because Jeffrey Epstein was arrested and by New York and investigated by New York State, it's already been shown that other states can prosecute Jeffrey Epstein. That non-prosecutorial agreement does not cover other states besides Florida cannot prosecute Maxwell, but New York State sure can, and he should know that. And Cohen was saying, well, look, this case is 25 years old because it only covers the years, the 94 through 97. So it's a nothing case. It's a nonsense case. And it's just the state dancing around the NPA, the non-prosecutorial agreement. Now, the judge let Cohen just go crazy. I mean, he took up so much time, and I really worry that if this case ever goes to trial, that Allison Nathan, the judge, who is a fairly young judge, just to give you an idea of what she looks like, she is a very butch lesbian. She's married to a woman. She has kids with her. That has nothing to do with the way she presided over this bail hearing. I'm just trying to give you a picture in your mind of her. But I was not impressed by the way that she handled the proceedings. Now, is it more difficult because it's a Zoom hearing? Maybe. But she let Cohen talk endlessly without interrupting him, without answering questions. She allowed him to make nonsense arguments without challenging him. I'm very worried that she is not up to the task of presiding over this trial. It got me very concerned. And when it was time for her to give her ruling, she first started off saying that even in very famous cases, these public figures deserve bail. So I almost fainted right there, thinking Maxwell was going to get bail. And Maxwell, through this, she blinked quite frequently through the whole hearing. Rubbed her forehead, looked down, but was very still mostly for the whole hearing. And the only time I saw any emotion was when the state said a line like a victim of Maxwell, and Maxwell gave her the side stink eye to the camera. She seemed to not like to be described as a victimizer. So you could see her perk up in the beginning. It looked like, as Nathan talked, it looked like she was going to get bail. And as Nathan said, that she's too much of a flight risk and she's not getting bail. And unless she makes an agreement or plea, she's going to be there till the trial begins. And that is till next July 12th. And then on there through the trial. She's going to be there at least a year unless she makes a deal. Maxwell just froze in a different way. I thought, oh no, is she starting to cry? Is she going to cry? Is she holding back tears? There was more rapid blinking. And then just once I saw her wipe away tears. And it was very shocking for me. And I don't think most people were shocked that she was denied bail. The charges are very serious. She is a flee risk. The circumstances of her arrest certainly indicate that she is willing to hide and she's willing to flee, and she's also willing to lie. She's already lying about her finances. So it just gave me the picture of a woman who's never been told no, who's always played by her own rules, always thought she was above the law. She's lived a different kind of life, and now she is living the life of, I would say, less than a commoner, a prisoner. And this is quite a shock for her. I don't think she's going to have a good year ahead in the Brooklyn jail. I think it's going to be incredibly hard for her, and I hope they can keep her alive. So I will be following this case very closely. Stay tuned for more updates like this, and thanks so much for listening. See you back next time.